So, thank you for sharing so open-heartedly. Appreciate that. Um, if I understand what you're working towards, so there is the live stream that you're putting together, which is a 24-hour event, and is that a 24-hour kind of Zoom call where people can come online and share their stories? Is that what you're thinking?
So what we at this point, what we imagine it would be, we have 24 hours to work with, and there will be different things. There will be some curated content where we're bringing things that's already been done. There will be actual live streams where we may be on site with somebody with camera and talking like a field trip, an excursion, going someplace and visiting somebody virtually and engaging, whether it's about the place or the stories they have to tell or their community with others. There will be engagements, like how do we create open circles or threads that people can tune into or just drop off their sense of a more beautiful world and find ways to, that's what we're looking for, is how do we build out this 24 hours where it's not just one stream, but there's, my belief is something needs to help tell the story that there are all these different stories going on, and you can drop in whatever interests you, and how do we help people to find that. And along the way, just as important, where we have More Beautiful World as a place to gather and integrate and weave. So we have two platforms to work with, kind of the host and then that day.
And then after the 24 hours, do you see anything continuing?
Those will be the questions.
Those will be the questions. Got it.
And we start with now what? And that's, so now we've got a time frame. We've got a kind of like this kickoff that we've like said, okay, we're going to jump in with Ben and do now what? And so we need some tools. We need the basic, we're going to start bringing more people in than ourselves. And we ourselves are hard enough to round up. It's like herding cats, as you know. And how do we have a more agile place where we're not looking into the emails to find the thread and it's all that good stuff.
So and what do you, just so I understand, what's happening with now what? Like what does that look like?
So the idea is that now what will be the first time we really open our circle to others, to people in the realm that we can actually come and ask the questions with, and then figure out what this project is really here to serve, and then who would want to step into that to help make that happen, and then go do it. And we're using this time frame as the kickoff to have focus meetings that people can come to, and we have the breakouts and do what we're doing now.
Right, over Zoom.
Yeah. Right now, that's what we're using Ben's platform, how the way he's doing it. Then we'll need to figure out how we're going to do that going forward as well, mixing together the different platforms. So right now, if you look at our More Beautiful World page and you go to the Seedlings and you scroll down, you'll see we've got you as our Sutra and I'm trying to bring everybody into that. And that's why I need to share how to best do that. And then we've got Trello for some boards for we're using our Zoom.
So I'll share with you a little bit about the background of Sutra, and then we can maybe explore some of the things that might be helpful in the context of what you're doing. So the heart of Sutra really started in 2011, where I had a kind of a mystical experience, and I came out of that, and my awareness really came on the topic of world peace, and it manifested itself to me as a distinct possibility that could be actualized in my life and that I could contribute to. And I had never thought about the subject before, but it suddenly became like a really big subject for me. And so since that time, I've spent a lot of time really exploring what does that mean in a practical, grounded way, and how my particular background with technology and startups could somehow serve that. And so since then, I engaged in a number of different experiments, from an online e-commerce platform for independent vendors where they could cross promote each other's products, really looking at how to build networks of mutual support, which it didn't end up working out. And then we tried a type of Kickstarter for non-monetary support, just really looking at like, what does it mean for um, to cultivate meaningful connection and mutual support in an online context. And one of our big insights in that came from an experience I had in 2014 when I participated in. Are you familiar with Theory U or the Presencing Institute?
I know of it, but I'm not.
Mm-hmm. So there's a guy named Otto Scharmer who is a professor at MIT and has this whole body of work. And he had this class called ULab, which had 30,000 people in it, and I enrolled in it. And one of the things they did was they broke us up into groups of 5 people, and that I came out of that. It was an 8-week experience, and I felt a very deep level of connection with the people in my group. And it was one of the first times where I was just like, wow, like I actually feel like a real sense of relationship with these strangers. And it was, it really crystallized this idea that the way that people feel connected is through small groups. And that became like a really big theme of exploration for me. And I went to my wife shortly after that and said, I really want to build some software around this. I'm not exactly sure what, but something around small groups and being able to organize and manage that. And so that was early 2015, where we really started writing the first code around Sutra, and started kind of trying it out in different co-working spaces and things like that a bit later, and really had a hard time with engagement. In 2016, we had an opportunity to work with the Harvard program in refugee trauma, and it's a 7-month blended learning program where they do 2 weeks in person and then 6.5 months online, all like kind of small group focused. And that was also a really big insight for us, because one of the things that we found is that people were really engaged. And this was our second, epiphany was that learning can be a catalyst for small group engagement. And a lot of what we do today as a platform is really look at that, really look at how to deepen the quality of communication, connection, and awareness in a small group, and particularly in the context of learning experiences. That's basically like our ongoing experiment. Does that make sense?
Hugely, yeah. Thank you. That's
Yeah.
really clear. I'm just sitting here, like inside, going, "Oh, this is amazing!" Because really, it's actually a discussion I started the other day, and I don't want to get too far into the weeds of it. But to me, it's the difference between technology and technique, and that's something I think a lot about for many. The distinction between our tools and how we use them, and how important that is. And I thought I was coming to have a discussion about the tool, but that's not what I just heard, and that's the most important part. So let's go further into that.
And it's interesting what you say, because this is a really big thing that we're exploring right now. Is that so what our like core aspiration is really about creating containers, conversational containers, where people feel very deep levels of connection, where there's a very deep level of presence, and where there is a possibility of insight, generating knowledge or understanding. And so a lot of what we look at is kind of how far can the software take you with that, and also realizing that like the software by itself doesn't deliver that, right? If you just use the software, you can use Sutra to create a discussion group like you might on Slack or WhatsApp, right? And without any of that. And so that the software really takes you so far. And then there's the kind of maybe what you talked about as the technique, the process part, the skillfulness of the convener, the commitment of the participants, how the container is created, the agreements, the expectations and the commitments within that container, and then how that's kind of extended into maybe the broader community and how people are brought into that. So there's like our software is designed, to support that. It doesn't deliver that by itself. And a lot of what we're really looking at cultivating right now is a set of best practices and resources that we can offer people, and really looking at, okay, well, how far can the software take you? Like, what can the software offer in terms of like reminders and support or prompts or, potential generative questions or whatever to the convener or to the participants. And how far can we go in terms of sharing with people everything we've learned about container building and holding space online, right? That's really like our expertise over the last 5 years of working with very different communities and groups and learning experiences. Has really revolved around um, uh, understanding how to create high quality containers in the online context, because in the offline context there's a lot of understanding around that, but in the online context there's not as much with this particular emphasis. And that's basically what we really love, working with people who resonate with that and have an interest in that, and want to continue um, unpacking that thread.
You're familiar with Ariadne, right?
With what?
Ariadne?
I'm not actually, no.
Oh,
How do you spell that word?
I'll share that with you.
Oh, is that a name or a
Well,
thing?
that's a name, yeah.
It's a
Ariadne.
name.
We'll get there. Hang on, but I don't want to take our time too far wandering into
Okay,
that labyrinth.
good. I appreciate that.
Okay, so um, this is why I'm here. This is why I connected with Ben, was even before I knew I was going to engage in this project. For me, the most important thing, what I've been trying to understand, is how we as humans are evolving into this space.
Mm-hmm.
And how does that affect our understanding of who we are on this planet and how we're connected to each other and the capabilities that we have now because of that. And but yet it's still evolving, and we're wondering how do we best, evolve it, and at the same time engage with it. It's the old building or rebuilding the airplane as we're still flying kind of a thing in human communications and perception and understanding and unlearning, right? So this makes it shifts my questions now, knowing this is the path you've arrived from and the gift that you offer. And this is where we are, is needing to receive such a gift in this group, because we are widening our circle, and even for ourselves, it's just, how do you have this kind of asynchronous relationship building where it's not that you're necessarily all on the same page, but you know where the page is, so that you can each check in to find out what you're nurturing, and how you're, and then share how you're showing up to do that and engaging. And hence we're learning from each other. And there's a lot of intent in our group about this journey along the way, on the event and thereafter. And it's all about community building. And I know for myself, this small community that I've been working with over the last year, oh my gosh, they are so wonderful people. We know each other so deeply now. But dude, that started a week butt naked at Essalon, in the hot tubs, and like grinding it out and working and being present. How do you do that now quickly to arrive at a place of trust and commitment, so that we can get on this path together? And your gifts are being called for loudly. Not just from me. I mean, this is, what's happening around us. And, we've got a few folks that are deep in technology and are looking over this, but we know that we have to reach out to those that have the tools and the techniques to welcome them into the circle, to see how this all works together, comes of that. It's something growing here through these interactions. And so I guess my next question for you is, well, you have the tool. Now I've got it on our website, and I've invited people to join. And actually, I don't know if you've looked, or if I don't know, can you see into what I've set up for More Beautiful World on Sutra?
I could if I took a look. I haven't took a look. I
can share screen.
Seen it yet, but but I can see it if I look for it. Yeah.
Yeah. So, but the point is, it's like I'm kind of guessing, how do we best use it without having to talk to you? Mm-hmm. Yeah. And what we're trying to do, I can tell you what we're trying to do at the event is bring people into these different threads. The community thread, the story thread, and the production thread, to weave people in, they can engage how they want in these different threads. And my belief is, as people do, this thing will come to life. It'll happen, right? But gosh, we need these places to engage with, and the tools, and then the technique. And it sounds like you've got it all going on.
So, do you want to share your screen with me briefly? And just kind of walk me around what you're setting up?
Yeah, let me get to the screen. Okay, so so you're there. This is our this is on More Beautiful World on the Seedlings page. The two pages that are active: Seedlings and Now What. Of course, that's all about the event. But on the Seedlings, when you scroll down, what I'm doing is saying, this is our portal. Everything, this is pretty transparent what's going on. So this is a project in motion. So what we've done, I said, okay, well, there's got to be a conversation about the whole big picture. And then these 3 threads to get people started. So I've got, an intro. I found a place to do that. And then, start a conversation. Again, I think it's the same intro. I gave some tags so we can filter. And then there's going to be a lot of emphasis on this one, building out, which will have, this is about producing this whole thing from here on out. So we have the event at the end that we need to get to, but also building out the website and just engaging people. And what does it take to administer something like this? The teams and the conversations that will lead to that. So, yeah. And then the community thread. And that's what we're starting with at Now What, and how do we go in and build that out. And one of the ones that's really we started to build out as an example was the story thread, where we're trying to understand what's the story, how do we bring people into the story and engage them and take them through initiation. And so we're talking about ritual and ceremony. This is one of the women that was in our group who brought her gift and said, this is how I can help, and what I'm thinking about. And so we want to see a conversation start around this, right?
So, okay, so this isn't, the story thread isn't a place for people to share their stories. It's for people to talk about how to collect stories. Is that correct?
At this point, it could be both. But what we're doing as well, when you go back to, let's see, when you go back to, where am I going? One of the things we were thinking about is using Trello as our incubator. And so what I've done, we build it out to mirror. So that we have one thing we're thinking about is we could use this as buckets, and also for the team. So we could have one that's more public, where people could come and leave their stories or links to stories that they want, they think they should know about, or a video recording or whatever. We would like to have a place to start collecting that, so that, But
And so you would you're thinking that you'd rather collect that through Trello, the stories.
I don't know right now. That's what we've built
Mm-hmm.
out. We're you know, again, we need to build the team, the people that are going to have
Yeah.
it. And right now it's a small group of 5 that are just resonating loudly and getting the messages out to bring people
Mm-hmm.
in to build this out. This is, this is like opening the door and welcoming people into the threshold for the first time. So we're at those initial phase, which is a little bit more manageable, but yet we're stepping into now what. And I'm like, I saw now what Grove. I saw Ben on the map when he started last year, and it was suddenly,
Mm-hmm.
expanded. And I'm like, oh, gee, what's going to happen here, and how are we going to manage this so that people don't go, this is, how are we going to herd the chaos,
Yeah.
all the energy.
Um, I'm just kind of like tuning into what's here for me. Um, I think one so yeah, I guess I can just share a few reflections with you. If you're collecting stories, then the benefit of doing that on Sutra would be that there's a conversational context for that. So it's like, people can, yeah, as opposed to Trello, I think in that context would be like a repository where people can like leave their story, but it would be less conversational. The other thing that you might consider is really thinking about, and again, this really depends on how many people you'll have involved, but really thinking about the intimacy of the story sharing. So when people are sharing stories, that can be long form content. I mean, probably at least 3 paragraphs or more. And it's nice to share a story and really feel heard. And so that can that can work really well in groups of 5 to 10. And so sutras are really good with that. The sutras are really good with being able to create multiple containers for that kind of thing. Where it could work well with, say, your Now What initiative and the other things you're doing is that, though, if you're having Zoom calls, those are really good container building opportunities. They're really good opportunities to have that face to face, to really share the story about this thing, like what it's about, right? Because you're and maybe to get a couple of people to share their story, right? Depends on the time thing, like, but also if someone shares their story on Zoom, it's a little harder to get the written record of it. So it's like, it's nice there's lots of different maybe you can just cut that clip and post it somewhere on the website of the story, and that's a version of that as well, which is really powerful. So there's lots of ways to collect the stories. But what I'm suggesting is that one way to look at it is that the video calls are really a container building opportunity, and where you really kind of connect people with that face to face. And then the text-based stuff is really where people can share their stories. So you kind of like, you build a container, and the hardest thing with the online versus the in person is really getting people to commit, to really like to and to follow through on their commitments on what they say they'll do. So they're like, oh, this sounds awesome, and now I have a million emails to take care of, right? So with the and so a lot of how you navigate that like comes into the container building, into how you really enroll people, how you really make explicit people's commitments, and really like not shying away from doing that. Be like, okay, like what are we committed to creating here? Like, is everyone committed to sharing their story? Great. Like, this is the circle, and when you register, you'll be put into groups of 5 or 10 or whatever, depending on how many people you have. But just being very explicit and really getting people's word around what they're agreeing to, and then carrying that forward into some kind of action. Is anything I'm sharing helpful right now?
Oh, goodness gracious. That was one of the first things that we, was put out, like, what's a conscientious agreement look like?
Mm-hmm.
And how do we, and that is in essence initiation,
Mm-hmm.
when you go through that to realize that you're arriving at that place where it's time for you to make that kind of commitment. And how do you help people how do you create the trust that it's okay to articulate that out loud so that you don't feel threatened by what you're committing yourself to, so to speak, I guess.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's the art form of it, right? Like you're like energetically sensitive, and maybe the people that are working with you, right? This is the art form of holding space, offline and online, but in the online context, it's really about like, bringing that sensitivity into what's going on in the space, and using that sensitivity to really like to draw people in, to create that safe space, to create that conversation about what's unspoken in that space, but now can be communicated so that it, whatever's in that space that is unspoken is there anyway. And when it becomes communicated, it becomes something that actually draws people in. So if some people have reservations, or some people are kind of like in the shadows lurking or just watching, the art form with the online thing is really navigating all of that to bring it into awareness, and to really like kind of create that sense of the collective body with the group of people.
Well, I'm sitting here vibrating. I sat in on a call with Nipun, who I guess very much lives in this kind of giftivism. I don't know if you know of his work. And I just met him through this group call. And then it turns out he sat with Charles, and I started listening to their interviews. And what you just expressed is, in essence, what I believe this group is trying to do, is to create that safe space where those who are generous enough to give through their gift of their stories and be open that way will draw others to do the same. And then it starts to shift the story. Yeah. So how do we do that?
Well, I think I'm really, I think I think you've gone a long way with the sutra. It looks like you're familiar with how the software works. And what I would suggest is, I can offer you like just a couple more techniques along these lines that might also help you think about how to get that online component engaged, because that's the hardest thing. Is really like I really like the metaphor of like starting a fire, and the hardest thing is getting that kindling going and getting that first log burning. And then once you have the coals, like you're good, you can throw anything on there. But that first like 30 minutes is like crucial, right? And it's very easy to lose the fire flame. So that the same metaphor goes with the online is, it's really important to get that focused engagement going. So even with what you're doing right now, like you have like 4 different circles there, to really focus on maybe one discussion that is going to be active. Once people are used to interacting there, they'll be interacting there. But the hardest thing is just to get that into the habit. And so, really enrolling people into being active on one discussion. Maybe it's the story thread, and building that habit. And like I can show you just briefly, I can share my screen with you, give you an example of
Where's that?
I don't know. This is this thing I use called Unsplash. It gives me a different image each time, and the images are amazing. It just loads them in the background.
Sure.
So this is a yoga teacher trainer community, and they've got like 652 members here, plus 456 subscribers, and it's very active. But
Are the subscribers different than the members?
Yeah, so the way it works is when you add somebody, so you can add somebody and say you add their email address.
Yeah.
And so they'll automatically start receiving updates from the communications, but they may not sign up yet. And so that makes them a subscriber. And once they actually click through and create an account, they become a member.
Is the only way to become a subscriber is through that invitation button?
The only way to add a person, you either have to add their username or their email address.
Okay, so you have to make them present before they can arrive. They can't arrive and say, "Oh, I want to. Oh, this looks cool. I want to enter."
Oh, they can. So, for example, like let's look. I think there's time of your life. Yeah. So here, basically, you can hand someone on a page that looks like this, where you can have a header, a description. So it could be like "More Beautiful World
Yeah.
is about this and that," and then they can click Join Circle and register, and then they'll be added.
Is that done through the because if you go to morebeautifulworld.sutra.co, you arrive at our thing, right? So
Let's see. .sutra.co. Yeah, here you are. Okay. So basically, let's see what. Let me take a look at how you set this up on the. Okay, so what I would do this a little differently. I would go here and we'll go to settings, and it looks like you had a. Right. So what I would do is to give you a nicer. I would say people must register before they can see or join the circle, and what that will do is there you go. And then so you have that right, and then I would just I would add a header. So here under appearance, you'll see there's a thing that says choose header.
I tried that. Okay.
You tried that, it didn't work?
It would come and go. I've never stayed. Maybe like I could try it again.
Let me see.
Maybe there's one there.
Hold on. I'm just going to add a dummy one for you, and we'll see.
Is there a specific size it needs to be?
It's 1200 by 300 works really well.
Okay, thank you.
So that, let's see if that works. Okay, so that worked. Yeah. So
thank you.
Yeah. Do you want me to delete this or leave it for now?
That's fine for right now. I'll go plug it in.
Okay, cool. So yeah, so this is basically the landing page they'll get when they go there. You can just share this, that link, and then they just basically create an account and they'll be added.
So you have to create an account. So that's registering right there.
Yeah. So basically, they click on this, and then it's sign up for your account, first name, last name, username, and then
they're in the whole More Beautiful World thing.
Yeah, let's just go ahead and we'll create demo. Okay. Demo. We'll call it demo. Demo beauty. These things. We didn't used to have this, and we get so many spam accounts. It's really unbelievable. Yeah, so they land right in here.
So you'll see everything. Okay, great.
Yeah.
And then I pin the one at the top.
Say you pin that, and then if, for example, you didn't want people to see the production thread, so you could go here and go to settings. I have super user rights here, so other people can't do what I'm doing right now. Yeah. But you say lets you make that private.
Okay.
And save, and then if I go here now, see, it just disappeared.
Oh, so we could start with just the pinned one as a welcoming and have the initial conversation that you talked about maybe happening there.
Yeah, exactly. You can make whatever private and then right, exactly.
And then invite people into the specific ones as we know who is kind of heading in those directions.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great.
The other thing you can do is I'll just kind of model this for you real quickly, and then you can delete it. But let's say you wanted to do some small group stuff, right? And so you're like, okay, what we're going to do here is we're going to create the conversation groups, and we have this distinction of a circle and a space. And basically, what you have here is a space, and then within it circles. They're really the same thing, just with things turned on and off. But in this case, I want to create a circle that contains discussions. And so I created this thing called conversation groups. And then, so yeah, where did it go? Conversation groups. And I'm gonna go inside here, and now I'm gonna create the groups. So I could say like group 1, and that could have 5 or 10 people, and then group 2, and that could have 5 or 10 people. So this is just a way that you can manage like lots of small group discussions and not have them be part of the main thing if you didn't want them to be, or you could just have it all in one
And
place.
can those intermingle?
It depends on the privacy setting. So if they're just if it's private, it's only visible to the people in the group.
Okay.
Right. And otherwise, it's if it's public, then everyone can see.
Okay. So for example, we could have in the story circle different groups, is what you're saying.
Yeah. So you hopefully this will make it clear without
Or
confusion.
is it nested? So in more
exactly, you can have infinite nesting here. So for example, if I went in a story thread here, you see it has a discussion, resources, and tagged.
Yeah.
So if I wanted to change that, what I could do is go here to the sidebar sections and basically say, I want to see the circles. And you could turn the discussion on or off depending on how you want to set it up. Because sometimes it's, I kind of advise having both.
Oh, see, I did put in a header.
Oh, there it is. Yeah.
Yeah, it was wrong size.
Yeah, and in the wrong, or maybe the right place, but you want to, each circle has its own header.
Okay.
So yeah, so here in the story thread, I just turned on the sidebar section for the circles. So now it can have nested circles.
And you do that per thread or per circle?
So the default when I create a new circle is that the circles is turned off. The nested circles is turned off. And then I would go into the settings for that circle, go to the sidebar sections, and then I can say, okay, hide the discussion and show the sub-circles or whatever.
Okay. So there's a lot of management a bit on setups that you need to tend to be aware of.
Yeah, like it's designed so that you can really create a lot of like a rich hierarchy. Like I'll show you what I mean here. If I go to the map, there's a map here where you can kind of see what's going on here. So now you have the story thread with group 1. You have the conversation groups that I just created with group 1 and group 2. So basically, like each circle is a standalone building block, and then you can basically like connect them to each other.
So for me, I maybe I'm wrong, but wouldn't the story thread, the community thread, and the production thread be underneath Journeys into the More Beautiful World? So that it's More Beautiful World is the kind of the umbrella, and you've got the Journeys as the first step along the journey. We're going to provision there and get ready, and then you're going to get into each thread. Does that make sense, or is it better to have it than central the way it's set up? I
think it's pretty. Yeah, it's you want to keep it like really, really simple. I think you're pretty good with the way it's set up. My suggestion would be to pick like as you're starting, like pick one discussion that you want people to be really active on, and then really like enroll people in being active on that. And then once you get that going, so for example, there's a lot of stuff under the hood here that you can do that gives you a lot of kind of capabilities. So for example, if you were going to do these group things here, we have a thing called structures, and a structure lets you basically drop a sequence of posts into the conversation. So I'll just quickly model it for you and say, like, we'll just call it like conversation structure, and we'll call it like what brings you here.
Oh geez, you can have links and
images,
your videos,
attention, and then like, what's your background? Tell us.
Oh, I see.
Yourself.
Oh, you're preloading it.
Yeah, you'll get it in just a second, I'll show you. And then how are you creating a beautiful world? And then and so this can be this. I'll set it. Yeah, just this will make sense in a second.
I'm sure.
So,
And are you writing this code yourself? Is this your baby?
Yeah, I did write all the code myself.
How long have you been working on it?
Since 2015.
Okay.
Yeah. So here, I'm going to just add this to group 1 and group 2, whatever, next. And when I go to one of these circles here, what there is now is a sequence of posts. So here's like, what brings you here? What's your intention? You know, to be present.
And people can actually upload images and other things into their.
Yeah, and so like, what's your background? Tell us about yourself. So if I wanted to, I could add an image here, and
yeah, cool.
Right, and so then like the kind of strength here is that you can really create a kind of a conversational sequence for people to go through in a conversational journey, and so like here, as I respond, the next prompt comes out, and so it's just a way to kind of navigate a group like discussion that you could potentially use. I wouldn't necessarily start here, but if you did start getting like a certain volume of people in small groups, then this is a great way to create a scaffolding for their conversation to
I can see that. So Lorenz, real quick, we're going long on time, and I don't want to keep going. So setting up, so there's the aspect of setting up, and we will need some tending and massaging, I understand, as I see it now, because as I've set it up, we're not ready to roll and have people just start adding things or engaging. There's things we need to do to the back end as I see it. Is that true?
I mean, I think you're pretty good here just to get like a conversation going. Like,
yeah, let's say we said that's the one right there. We're going to start with journeys.
Right. So you're good. You're good. And I'm going to I think I made a change here that I will revert. I think, you now you have this video and you have a sense of kind of like this, the whole sidebar section thing. So I'm just going to, actually,
I think it was a different one.
I'm going to delete the circles I created here because they're, and I'm going to turn that off, just bring it back. So you can play with it a little more. I always advise people to just keep it really simple because people get really excited about the kind of hierarchy stuff, and but it's always best to keep it pretty flat, because otherwise people get lost. So I think you're good. I would just get focused on one conversation, and really also what I was suggesting is really looking at your video engagements as an opportunity to build the container and really enroll that commitment, and then experiment with the online space. That's the hardest territory to navigate, is getting, like, you get this amazing energy and connection in the face-to-face, and then getting that to translate to action in the online.
Okay, so we're gonna attempt to do that, and we've got what I think 2 weeks before the actual launch, where it has his opening ceremony on the 23rd, and then on the 24th in the morning we're having our initial opening, and then we're going to meet every Tuesday morning throughout the engagements, and then have these breakouts depending on who shows up if we need to, and zero in on these different threads. So between now and then, what I'm going to try and do is first get my group to sign into this thing and start, playing with it and watch the video and understand who you are and what your intent is and how we can potentially use it, and see if I can get that going and check in with you if that's okay.
Mm-hmm. Of course, absolutely.
Between now and then, and engage a little bit more with you, so that we all have a good or a better understanding of or a grasp of how to work with this. And thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you. It's a pleasure to connect with you, and your energy and the energy of everything you're doing. So if you have any questions, just feel free to shoot me an email, and I'm really happy to have you guys as part of this this journey. You know, it's a journey for me too, really bringing this quality of awareness and being into the online space. So everyone I work with, I you know, I'm excited to kind of continue that experiment to really like learn about how that's possible, what the possibility is.
Thank you. I look forward to exploring that further with you.
Yeah. All right. Much love.
Take care.